In this video, I'm going to do a demonstration of how to rig a character from one of the artists in our community. So the artwork was sent to me, and it looks like it could have been vector, but what I got was a PNG. So what I did was I took it into Illustrator and I vectorized it. Sometimes when a character vectorizes, it goes great. And sometimes there is a little bit of cleanup to work on after you're done with that. I'm going to speed up the video just so that you're not looking at this long, tedious process. Unfortunately, the PNG arrived with some checkerboarding around the edges. So I cleaned that up, and I also prepared to segment the pieces and parts. One thing that I find incredibly helpful when it comes to preparing artwork for rigging is using something I call a registration wheel. There's nothing to it. It's just a circle with two lines drawn through it. What I find is that when the areas of overlap are circular, when the limbs or the appendages are bending along that circular shape, it looks really, really good. One interesting kind of challenge with this character was the character has this really heavy outline going around it. And so I wanted to keep that outline, but at the same time I had to remove it in certain places where there's overlap. And also here, I'm getting to the point where now I need to solve some of the body mechanic issues. Body mechanics is my way of describing how do you layer the artwork so that when it bends and folds and slides along against itself, it looks like it's a part of an organic system that's natural. The total time on this demo was about 2 hours. A lot of that time was really figuring out those body mechanics, making sure that when things are rotating and twisting and moving, that it looks convincing. I did something interesting with the collar. So I have part of the collar on the front of the character and part of the collar where the hood is behind the character. So the neck is sandwiched between two pieces of artwork, one piece of artwork for the hood in the rear and another piece of artwork for the collar in the front. Then finally, we make these parts into symbols, and then we move the registration points where these symbols are going to rotate. In the freestyle rigging process, all of the things that you do that build up to the actual freestyle rigging, though somewhat time consuming, not nearly as involved as the manual rigging process. So even though it is a little time consuming, when you finally get to the freestyle rigging stage, the freestyle rigging goes so fast. I'm checking the rigging to make sure that the connections look good. You'll notice sometimes that the arm will bend in some odd ways, and that's simply because the IK controller has two settings. One where it'll rotate the appendage clockwise, and then if you hit the H key, it'll rotate it the opposite direction, counterclockwise. So this is a very fun character. This character is perfect for this type of puppet animation and this type of rigging. If you look carefully, I took some liberty and I made some small adjustments to the art. I made the mustache a little more tapered at the end. So again, I'm going to start with placing those registration wheels. I'm going to size the wheel so that it is the shape of what I would hope the two different joining parts are overlapping. All right. I'm taking parts and pieces from the original leg artwork, duplicating it, and then shaving it down to form the upper thigh. And then I'll do the same thing for the lower leg. I like to retain those registration wheels in the symbol to make sure that those pieces are rotating in the most logical place where the joints are. I used to always be so afraid of breaking the rig, which is where if you remove something or if you duplicate something, all of a sudden the rig doesn't work anymore. But in my latest rigs, I'm finding the Smart Magnet Rig tool is really sturdy. Normally, with a rig, I'll have a separate piece for the pelvis, which I sometimes call the hips, sometimes I call it the root or the base. For this character, I go from the chest right into the legs because of the hoodie that the character's wearing is bulged out at the end. And so I'm tucking the legs underneath that hooded area of his garment. Even though the upper part of the character was already done, I'm going to go ahead and remove that rig information and just do a fresh set of rigging on this character. One of the other things that I'll need to do, since we have a bunch of symbols now, is we'll need to make the character Adaptable. That's shorthand for what before you'd have to go and select each symbol and hit Control T to move that registration point from where it's defaulted in the upper left hand to the place where the pivot point is. That's something that the plugin does for you. What's so crazy cool about the Make Adaptable button here is that it will batch operate. So if you select all of the symbols and you hit the Make Adaptable button, it'll do it all. It takes a minute, so you'll see your computer kind of processing and thinking about it. But then after just a little bit, it'll be all done. And now we'll go ahead and use the Freestyle Rigging tool to draw the skeleton in and draw the branches out from the chest. Notice that the collar and the hood of the character is not moving along with the character. There's a couple of things that we're going to do with that. And again, I was able to remove that belt piece. Not really needed. So let's talk about this collar piece and the hood, or the front and back of the hood. I've freestyle rigged it to the character, and you'll see that it rotates and moves with the character. However, it's doing something called soft rotation, which for the most part is desirable, but not here. We actually want the collar and the hood to hard rotation so that it is turned with the exact same angle as the chest. And to get that to happen, we're going to use the Weld Element tool. Another thing that I'm going to do at this point real quick is I'm going to go ahead and properly name all of the symbols. Sometimes if I'm in a hurry or on a smaller project, I'll just leave the default symbol 1, symbol 2, symbol 3 names. But here, I want to inspect the Smart Magnet Rig, and it will be incredibly helpful to be able to see the names of the symbols as I interact with the nodes in the connection editor. The arrangement of those nodes bothers me just a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it as it is because the rig is working as I want it to. And now one of my absolute favorite parts is we're going to enhance the rig with IK effectors. Oh my goodness. The plugin should be coming out of beta any day now. And the IK effectors is something that's absolutely new to version 6 of the Splash Power Tools. Look at what a pleasure it is to animate and to and to pose with this character with the IK effectors. And as much as I love the IK effectors, that's really just one tool to manipulate and pose the character. It's still awesome to just use soft rotation on the actual character. So I've hidden the registration wheel so that we can really see what the character is looking like. There are a few things that are going on that the screen recording software that I'm using doesn't show me the key presses that I'm using. When you click and drag on the limbs, you're going to soft rotate the limb or the part of the character. When you hold the Alt button down and you shift and drag, that's going to give you hard rotation on the child elements. It's a little difficult to explain without throwing up some imagery to show you which buttons I'm clicking and what I'm doing. And real quick, as we wrap up the video, I'm going to show you an outline so that you can see what I call the body dynamics again, or the body mechanics. You can see how things are rotating and shifting as the character is animating and moving around. And finally, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and set down some key frame poses for the character. You could get lost in just kind of jiggling the character around and doing different things with him. But two things that we'll want to do to really finish this process off. One is we would need to distribute all of the pieces and parts of the character to layers. Right now, if you look down at the timeline, you'll notice that all of the symbols are on one layer. And to me, miraculously, the manipulation of the character still holds up. It still works. That's amazing to me. But that's so cool. But as cool as that is, if we ever wanted computer-assisted animation, we're going to need to have each of those pieces and parts on their own layer. Most of the rigs that I'm setting up are between 14 symbols all the way up to 22 symbols. And so your layer stack is going to be at least that deep, which I think is still fairly manageable. There's a lot to love about this plugin. I used to really agonize over paying for plugins or wanting to bother to install them. But there's a point where something that you're trying to do, maybe it's character animation, maybe it's a particular special effect, and a plugin can come in there and just make something that would manually take a very, very long time, and it will drastically shorten the amount of key presses and mouse clicks that you have to use to get that same effect. But in the case of Flash Power Tools, there's absolutely no other way to get this ease of control over your character. Please stay on the lookout for when this plugin comes out of beta. If you're interested in checking with the developers to see if you can participate in the beta testing program, I'll have a link to his information in the description of the video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Looking forward to showing you something exciting in the next one.